Recording in progress.
No, she's probably like me. I always try to at least stay semi caught up on emails, so when I get back, I don't have and deal with this looming.
All right, we'll get started here. Welcome to Washington City Council workshop meeting. Today is Wednesday, October 12th, 2022. We are here at City Hall in the council chambers for our work session. As always, our meetings are also streamed live on our YouTube channel. That is washingtoncity.org/meetings. And so at this time, I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
A motion by Henderson,
Second.
second by Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. We'll move along to our first item of business, which is a continuation of our discussion in regards to off-street parking. I'm scanning the room for our Community Development Director, Drew Ellerman, who is right on cue. And this is a conversation that we've had for a few meetings now. And Drew will invite you to continue to give us some updates and facilitate some discussion with the council on their input on this ordinance.
I guess my first question, everybody have a chance to kind of mull over your comparison charts and what the ordinance is proposing. If you had any questions, I didn't hear anything back from anybody, so sometimes no news is good news. Hoping that's the case, or if not, I'm ready and willing and pen in hand if you had any questions or ideas.
So Drew, one of the things that I think I'm just not clear on is, are we separating, you say multifamily, but are we separating townhomes and apartments, or are we just putting them all together?
We're kind of putting them all together in essence, and that's why I went back and, remember I told you I kept having that hard time about where I put in that extra, asterisk portion when it comes to adding 1 bedroom versus 3 bedroom, et cetera. I wanted to keep our townhomes I did kind of separate them in the numbers, even though they're all thrown in here as multifamily, but the way the chart works out, that's why I came up with the chart and that extra little caveat. When you get a 1 bedroom, if you have so many 1 bedrooms and so many 3 bedrooms, then you can break this up. So they are blended together, but that's why I had to come up with that.
Well, I do think we should split them apart because they are kind of different animals. And more of just, I like the table, but I think we need to split up multifamily, townhome, condos, and then you have apartments, just because they're kind of different things. I hate that we're blending the code. If it makes sense to do different and just be clear on what we expect for apartments and what we expect for townhomes. And we've only got a couple apartments in town, not too many, but we have way more townhomes and we know the problems with those. So know that we're underparked on those typically.
Yeah, because of the storage, the garage/storage is what they turn into. So, but the table I feel will look a lot the same. We're still probably going to want to go to the 2.0 and the 2.25 in the townhome, but just don't give any drops in that.
And then we can discuss let's talk about how we allocate the parking for apartments versus townhomes. And I just think they need to be separate.
When you say apartments and condos, those are similar. It's just the ownership structure, right?
No, townhome and condos are typically similar, and the ownership is different.
Can be. It can be equal, but
I
it
guess
can
it
be
depends
different.
too, because you can get some condos that are pretty high story, and
You get condos that look like apartments but are sold separately.
yeah. Yeah. I don't know, just
Yeah, I think what we've seen with townhomes is typically like a fourplex, 2-story, 3-bed, 2-bath kind of a thing. And we've seen a few projects in town where, the garage is small and used for storage, and then we end up with cars in the short driveway and then on street, and then it kind of spills over to the side street. So that's townhome. And then I think really what spurred this conversation or this relook at the ordinance was, just the 2 or 3 fairly large apartment projects that came through. And in our early discussion, we did make that distinction. Do you feel like, Drew, that you don't typically see a 1-bedroom townhome? You might see condos that are 1-bedroom, but typically a townhome is.
And very odd to see a 1-bedroom townhome. They're probably out there, but the chances are going to be probably, a slim to none in a 1-bedroom townhome.
yeah, I don't think you're ever going to see that would be more of an apartment that got turned into a townhome or something,
Yeah.
like somehow, I don't know, an old
Be hard to
apartment.
resell that when it is 1 bedroom.
So
There's not a lot of value in a 1-bedroom townhome for ownership. So
maybe we can, to keep the discussion going, break it up into, let's start with townhomes, Kay, and then let's look at apartments, and maybe there's a mix, it doesn't matter, but let's just my mental health, let's segregate them and make sure we understand one before we look at the other. And so I'm just throwing this out here. So if we start with townhomes, the concern we've had with townhomes is either if they don't have a driveway, then they end up always on the street because their garages are full. It's pretty typical. We are seeing a trend of more people, because of the price of housing right now, is that more people, it's becoming more than just a starter home, in my opinion. It's becoming the next phase of home. The starter home, typically, it's still a starter home, but they're starting out in apartments, working toward a townhome, and then working toward a home. And so, but they might be farther in their life. I'll admit, if I had to buy a home right now, I'd be looking for townhomes because that's what I can afford, is that area. So with that, in my small little family, I'd be 2 cars looking at a third here shortly, real soon. And just noticing the townhome that I drive through every day through my house is that very few use the garage. They're both parked in the double driveway, which is super nice, and we still have flooding on the street. But they're wide enough streets that they work. The streets that don't work is when we narrow the street and don't have a
we
section.
go to private streets, and then
Private streets.
and they're all driveway, entrances off of that private street. There is nowhere to park but in front of your own driveway
Yeah.
on
But-
that street.
But it does work. So our current code, right, so I know you had the charts, but it wasn't in our current packet. It was in like 2 weeks ago. I only got
The handout that you
handout
gave,
you gave us.
Drew, and
okay.
it was really handy because you took some real life projects that this council approved and showed what the parking, what we ended up getting with our current ordinance and what it would have required with the new ordinance. Do you happen to have that electronically, or do we need to dust off the Elmo for those of us who've been here for?
Almost gone.
'Cause that would be helpful to look at that again,
It would, yeah, it would be.
because there are a few
I was going
developments.
to try to make a bunch of.
Tara, is this something that you could scan and drop into the packet real quick? I think this is worth having. And maybe you can just drop it into the packet. Whatever works best for you.
There's a few developments that I can think of that are a parking disaster, and then some that are okay, yet they were both approved with the same parking ordinances. So what I'd like to see is, what is the difference? Is it the width of the streets? Is it, what makes the difference between, development A that's a disaster when you go in there's cars everywhere, or development B, which, isn't too bad. So I
Well,
know
the
you
one-
had
yeah.
you had some of them.
Yeah, the more recent ones we did, but the one that stands out is always the best example of what not to do anymore. And I hate to say it, but it facts are facts, right? And it's the truth. But if you go up to Bluffview Townhomes, it tells us exactly what not to do.
And that's the exact one.
And that was one of the first big ones that came in, and I just
Pull it
think
up
that the
here.
council got over, and I can say that because none of you folks were on that council back then. That's when I first started. I think they just got this pony and dance show that, there was so many other things with that project. Parking, unfortunately, kind of got
Well, yeah.
Beside, and then
we
the
know it has
nightmare
issues,
came.
But the reason why it has issues is there's just not on-street parking, right?
It's a private
So,
street.
and there's no driveways on that one. So it floods it to the public streets, which are
single
outs-
car garages,
Single
one
car
driveway, and
garages.
that's the problem.
But even if you look at single car garages don't bug me because no one parks in their garage.
No, they don't.
But even if you look at a double car garage, you might get one car in there. Most maybe, yeah. I mean, so it's hard for me to look at the garage as I can see it as one car, but I could never see it as two cars. But I also think if you have a double car garage, then that at least gives you a double driveway to park on it.
And I hate to say it, but that's where we for me, it's almost like we're using the guest parking to help make up and offset that. I only say that because I think that's really the best place for it to end up. So that's why we're going from the 3.5 per unit down to 3. One parking place for visitor parking, down to 3. And that helps, I think, make up a lot of that, because you never know what you're going to kind of get, unfortunately, in each one of these developments.
Let's hold that thought for just one second. I want to go back to what Councilman Coates was talking about. So as I was listening, I was thinking you got apartments, townhomes, and condos. So was our focus more on the rooftops or the doors? And if so, how many people can we expect to be drivers in apartments as opposed to townhomes or condos? Is there a difference? Is there a distinction between them, or should they all be considered by doors? I don't know. But
There's a difference in bedrooms.
in bedrooms,
So if you look at the fact that there's, if it's a 3-bedroom, right, you're probably going to have a family in there that's going to rent a bigger apartment. But if you look at a 1-bedroom, it might be a single person.
probably one car mate or possibly two,
or a
maybe.
couple,
Or a married young
or a married young couple, and they'll have 2. So that's the tough thing but you're going to have a mix. So that's why the 1.75, it doesn't bug me too much. What is it now for us?
1.1 on a one bedroom.
1.1, and that's just not enough for.
That's where our problem's been. I
And that's
think.
where we kind of got burned, I think, on some of these other projects I wouldn't say burned, but we pushed back. And I like Councilmember Casperson's thought is, well, if we're pushing back on parking, why don't we update the ordinance? So I think that's kind of,
See, and that's where I came when we first talked about this. I just said we're just going to go 2, no matter what. Everybody's going to have a minimum of 2 cars, no matter if it's a 1, 2, or 3 bedroom.
But you don't want the parking. You don't want to do too much.
That's what pushed me back. Yeah.
Because you're dealing, and I don't know if 1.75 is the number, right? Right now, I'm just talking it out, but I do see that it's less than 2. A 2-bedroom is 2, because most likely you're going to have at least a family and an extra bedroom. I don't know. It still could be a single mom and a kid room too, right?
Exactly.
So, but is there a mix between? So does 1-bedroom, does it make more sense to do 1.5 and then a 2-bedroom 2 and then 3-bedroom? I don't know why you really need, I kind of think you make up the guests with the guest parking, you might make up a 3-bedroom issue. I don't know. Because that still seems like it's a 2 and above is 2, because it's still a mom and a dad. Now you're gonna have some high school kids you could have a family with 6 drivers or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
A big
And
family
we have a
that-
few places like where people have rented a house. There's 6 people, living in it, unfortunately, and they all take, 2 of them per bedroom or something. There's 6 vehicles. I have a few places in town. They meet the family ordinance, so I can't do anything about it. But they've got 5 or 6 drivers and 5 or 6 vehicles.
But you can
Yeah.
say that. But I have a neighbor. His entire garage is full of motorcycles. His entire driveway is full of cars, and he has his work truck parked on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
The one in that's why I say it's
but it's
that.
the nicest. He cleans his cars constantly, and they look beautiful. And so it doesn't, it's not like a junkyard. So it's great looking.
Right.
So it's just kind of like, you can have that, but then if it's one out of all, I don't think it's a huge deal. You just gotta weigh the,
And that's where you got to come up. And that's why I went back to this, putting in this matrix to come back and say, okay, if we do have so many, and again, remember I told you, I hate to use the term, but it was just that weird, crazy math that I had to find some place to get more parking, but not too much. Because again, we've talked about if we make them build too much parking, then we've lost landscape area or we've lost dwelling unit area because they have to have so much parking. So I don't want to go too much, but we can't go short.
but we've also increased the cost because those stalls aren't cheap. Every stall costs a ton of money. And to add that additional cost then affects rents and affects those which we're
Everything
trying
else.
to.
That's why I'm trying to help, so I went back with what ours says and how many parking stalls will be required, knowing we're a bit short. And so I kept trying to get that median of what we've done in the past where you have had people actually add more parking. I tried to hit that number or just maybe just above it. And so that's where I came up with all these numbers, trying to get close to that point because I thought we'd done fairly well with what we've made them go above the parking as stated in the ordinance, and they've accepted to do that. But I wanted to reach that point at least, and maybe a handful more.
So your
That's where these numbers
parameters were
came.
more about a little more is better than a little less.
That's right. And I went back to what you as
I
a
agree with
council
that.
have felt comfortable with in approving, but was beyond our ordinance. I wanted to hit those marks on average. Is kind of, I threw all that in. And again, if you saw my wastebasket, it's that thing where you're coming with the ideas. I fill it all up with scratch and doing, no, that one's not going to work. And so finally I came down and the closest thing that I got was what we have on the board. And it worked for townhomes because again, in the townhome project with those 3 bedrooms, council, that's why I bumped it up to 2.25 because I think we need to have that quarter in there for that family that has mom and dad driving, but not all of them do, but have at least a teenager driving or so you're going to have at least 3 vehicles, but not in every 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom. So you got to find that ratio there. But I think what helps is, and actually kicks us up a little higher, is that the visitor having that 3, dropping down from 3.5 to 3 helps get us to where I think the comfort level is in that not having too much, but definitely not coming up short. So it works on that. And again, Councilman Coates, I was just trying to get back. That's why the 2.5, and when we, keep those just for the townhomes, a 2 and 3 bedroom, keep that parking just like it is. There is no, because you're not going to have that ratio where they can drop down to a 2.0 and a 3-bedroom, because you're not going to have a 1-bedroom townhome. So that kind of helps elevate that. And then dropping the visitor parking is going to help for those extra stalls out there for people to, even though they won't be visitor, they'll be used by the owners, but it helps pick us up stalls.
But then that's why, again, I think we should separate the 2 distinctions.
Yeah, they'll look in fact, they're going to look almost identical with what I'd present, because I went back and did all my formulas for no apartments, but just based on regular townhomes even. And it came up to the 2.0 and the 2.25. So, I mean, we can do that. I have no problem making you 2 charts, but they're just going to look, the other one's just going to take the 1-bedrooms out, and it'll just kind of look like this one as well without 1 bedroom in it.
And you've done a little survey with other cities to see where they're at.
Yeah, if that chart that we gave you, we're still right with a lot of cities. In fact, we're under some of them, but again, I think we've agreed we don't want to go too far and make too many. It just, there's no advantage in that, just saying, for that one, that Thanksgiving or that Black Friday event. But I don't think we need to make all of our parking based on one time there's a wedding in the area. And I'm just using that because we know that extra people might show up
I
or
like
something.
that. I like that we're in the middle of the pack, right? As we compare ourselves with similar size and cities, but the risk is if we're too low or too generous on our parking, then we might tend to get a little bit out of balance with the number of apartments. And certainly we've had a number of apartments come through, and they're an important part of an array of housing options. But if we're too generous on that, then we might have more than we hope for. But
yeah, that's why I kind of wanted to give you this. It gives you kind of a comfort of where you're at, how many more are being added versus what you approved. And I hope that kind of helped, because that'll still be just because we use these 3, these are going to be pretty much common with any project that may come walking through the door. That's why, I went with the different numbers, et cetera, in there, different number of units. different styles, and it just showed you all the variations. This one had a few more 3-bedroom, this one had more 1-bedroom, but it all kind of panned out and showed you the, the extra that it added. The one added 26 more, the one added 22, the other one 39, because it had a lot more 1-bedrooms in it and stuff. So that kind of helped give you what that will be adding. We definitely won't, I don't think, come up short. But yet I don't feel like it's too far. Now I still am struggling with keeping the visitor parking at 3.5, but part of me says I'd rather shoot myself in the foot now and have a few extra in there on that. And so that's why I just said, you know what, I've got to leave it at the three because we don't want to come up short. I think the chart works out to give us the extra, what we felt comfortable with in the past, adding 2 projects, and then the visitor is going to help for that, that offset of not being caught short.
The other thing that I think is important, and I asked you about this outside the meeting, is that this is not the ratio for mixed use. So let's say that we end up with the mixed use in our downtown, they wouldn't, the parking requirements wouldn't be the same for that. But let's spend about 10 more minutes or so on this topic if we need that much time. But before I go on, I'd just like to recognize former council member Troy Belliston. I know this is something that you've dealt with as a council member and as a builder. If you'd just come up and take 2 or 3 minutes and give us some of the thoughts that you have on that, Councilman. And if you just state your name for the record.
Troy Belliston. Thanks for actually calling me up. I came a couple weeks ago to look at this, but so I'm doing a project in Cedar City, and parking came up, and parking they did the same thing. They blended townhomes and apartments, and the struggle is, hey, how do we figure out what the parking ratio is? Because we've got all these townhome problems, right? But parking in apartments is so radically different that I was having kind of a hard conversation with the engineering. So I started going up Cedar City counting cars. Their ratio is 1.3 per bedroom. And in the, 4 to 6 times that I went up there counting cars at midnight, 4 a.m., Sunday morning, whatever, the most I counted in an apartment project was 1.3 per apartment. The challenge in putting that number down and saying, hey, this ought to apply for apartments too, is they're just different. The leases typically say two cars. In townhomes, the problem is, you really can't be counting tandem, but a lot of it, that's where you have the issues, where you're trying to count tandem and off-street parking. But in an apartment, it's all dedicated. They don't have garages. They typically don't have as much stuff that they're trying to park inside. I did I'm going to hand this to Drew and he can hand it up. This was just a breakdown I did for them up in Cedar City. At the end of the day, every city's different. Councilman Ivy brought up that what do we do for the other cities? I think a lot of cities do that. They kind of throw a dart at the wall and say what it is, but every city is so radically different that all I would suggest is count cars in Washington City and the apartment projects around Washington City and get the actual ratio of where you're at. Because if you're 2 cars per apartment with 1 per 3 guest parking, but in the townhome, you're 2 off-street parking with, or 2 1/4, if it's 3-bedroom or more, you're actually 1 per 4 in a townhouse project rather than, what it actually might be. So in Cedar City, when we went up and did this, the engineering staff said, hey, let's actually take a look at it. They hired Horrocks. Horrocks came up with the same numbers. They modified their parking from 1.3 per bedroom down to 1 per bedroom, which in our project equated to a reduction of 108 stalls and an increase of 24 apartments that could be built on that property. And it's a total swing of about $7.5 million in value, which is property tax and everything else that's coming in, people that can be housed. So again, like I said, I would just challenge somebody to go start counting cars, because I think you'll be surprised at what the actual parking ratios are. We found up there it was less than 50% in most cases that was actually parked. And so that's just a lot of asphalt that has to be maintained. And next thing you know, you got somebody's 1970s Plymouth Duster project sitting out there on cinder blocks, because at some point they're going to repair it, right? So parking is a liability. If you don't need it, don't, anyway.
Good points. Thank
Thanks.
you. Appreciate you, Mr. Belson.
So I'll do the daylight shift. Who's got 2 to 4 a.m.? Count these cars.
I'm busy. No, I think he has some good points. And one of the things I have though is I see the demographic changing too as we're moving forward, and I think we just have to have this on our mindset is that because of affordability of homes, you're going to see more people moving into apartments that traditionally wouldn't have in old times. And so I just want to keep that on our mind too, is that, yeah, traditionally it has been you're going to have the people that are always apartment renters, and then you're going to have people that are transitioning apartment renters to move to townhomes to homes. But I see more people staying in apartments longer, and I just think it's sad, but it's the part of our country that's moving toward because of cost of living. And so I want to keep in mind that as we're thinking about this, that I see more parking happening because there's going to be more people that live in the apartments than
longer, yeah.
historically. But I do agree with what Troy has said about that it can be lower apartments versus townhomes. But I just don't know. That's why I think we need to, like, in my mind, that's why we got to separate them and just be clear: apartments, townhomes. And
I think with me, Councilman, is you can edge each way. A little too much or a little not enough. And it's hard to know exactly what those numbers are. We've obviously had conversations, and because we're such a unique kind of a destination place now, a lot of those numbers get skewed a little bit on weekends with holidays, or if there's things going on. And I understand that everything costs and everything drives prices up, and I do recognize that completely. But I would rather have too much than not enough. But I think what you're saying is what are those numbers? What's enough? And I appreciate the conversation.
So I'm sorry. My daughter lives up in, up north in an apartment building. And I believe it's a large apartment complex, several hundred units. And I think they have a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. And I think they have 2 parking spots per door. And they're all assigned parking spots, so a visitor can't go, park, because there's just visitors parking. They only have like 20 parking spots for visitors. And when we go up there to visit them, there's, 100, if not more, parking spots
During
just
the day. Yeah.
there, even at night. I mean, just, but, so I can see the point of, maybe apartments are a different animal. Maybe we should separate them out. And, the place where I've seen a problem in town is with townhomes that have garages, and then they store everything in the garage, and then you've got, 2 cars in the driveway plus another car in the street. And anyway, it might be worth looking at somehow separating them out.
Isn't it interesting that the garage, there's such a lifestyle differences in between an apartment and a townhome?
Yeah.
Councilman Martinson, what are your thoughts on this?
I was just looking through, going to be hard, Mr. Belliston, Troy, just looking through those apartment complexes just to see, because Cedar has such a prevalence of the college community. And I noticed there are just 2 of them that were college, right? Canyon View and Driscoll Lane looked like they were the closest ones to the college. I guess university. The other ones were.
So it's funny, and all these are all on the north end of town. And I talked to the different people there, and not many of the college students are up in those, right? Those are all family style apartments, and the ones that they had that were down at the college. The biggest problem they had at the college was on-street parking, right? Well, neighbors would come in and complain about on-street parking. Fine. If you don't like on-street parking, take it out of your design guidelines and your city ordinance, right? But they would park on street because it's closer to the door getting in the building than the parking lot around the back, So the study that was done by Horrocks actually reduced the parking in the student areas, the recommendation reduced it. It still had it slightly higher than the family, but they reduced them both significantly. Like I said, in our case, it was, a little more than 30%, citywide that they went in and made that change. So
Right. Thank you.
It was just interesting. And then I did just some quick math because, trying to simplify ordinances, right? If we did do and Drew's probably done the math as well, but, we did just cleaning that up and just saying 2, whether it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom. If you take Wasatch Builders, they were with the visitor parking at 1 per 3.5, it takes you to 384 stalls instead of the 375. The Turner project takes you to 329 versus 323. That's leaving it at 3.5, 1 per 3.5 on the visitor parking. And then the Bluffview, it would actually be at 404 stalls if we did 2 per, just cleaning that up if it were 2 on the 1 and 2 and 3-bedroom, just to give some context on that one.
So and I don't think I followed you all the way because I was working on the Wasatch Builder one too. And I put did you say the 1-bedroom at 1.5?
Nope, I left everything at 2 with the visitor parking at 1 per 3.5.
And that's, how many total did you get?
384.
See, that's a lot. I think that's too much.
And the proposed requirements would be 375.
So I did the same thing but I did 1.5 for the 1-bedroom because I do think there's that mix on the 1-bedroom. I did 1.5, which gave you 99. I did 2 times the 2 for the 2 bedrooms, and then I did 2 for the 3 bedrooms, and I got a total of 359. And then I added another 56 for just a third for visitor, and it got me to 384. So it was. Oh no, sorry, it got me to 359. I messed up there. So it was 303, and then I got to 56, so it got me to 359, which is in between the 325 and the 375. And the biggest difference is I dropped the 1-bedroom to 1.5 versus Drew has 1.75.
And that was another place I was going to say, either we go to it's the ratio between the 3.5 and the 3.0 on the visitor, or that 1-bedroom, you come back and can drop down to 1.5. I don't think I'd go below 1.5 though. I tried to at times, and it just kept making everything back to where we were almost. So,
Council, the other question I have, and it sounds like we might not be ready for a vote on this in our next meeting, but the other question I have is, do you feel like you'd like to have Drew go back and put together a separate table for apartments versus townhomes and bring that back? Is that my kind of gauging everyone correctly?
I would. I'd like to separate it in the ordinance. And then, I don't know, I think we need to look at how we deal with condos, but those are kind of.
They're almost, I treat them like an apartment almost. It's because in the way they're built, it's just like an apartment in essence, but problem is some of them do have garages. Like
with a condo, you're talking.
Yeah, there are some.
Typically,
my little sister lives in a condo it's a 3-plex condo. They all have a single car garage, but there's 3 apartments all in one building,
Right,
3 condos.
They'll have a ping pong table in the basement or something anyway, in the garage. So.
But I'm just telling they do make them, but some are with garages, some aren't. But I would almost treat them like they are an apartment because.
Because one that you could look at is La Venita. I drive by that one every day, right here up Main Street, and it's a condo project, no garages. It's 4 plexes, and they've just got the dedicated parking, dedicated covered parking, and visitor parking. And every now and again, you'll see a truck and a trailer on Warm Springs Road, and that's it. And that parking it's not ever crowded. It's full. So that would be a good. See what that ratio is.
They're not really parked on Main Street, which is good. I think they don't dare. But it is Warm Springs when they're shooting up by that vacant lot heading up towards.
And there's, like I said, it's usually a truck and trailer because it doesn't fit.
Good feedback.
So I think Troy brought up a good point, and we see it at different places. If it also matters where the parking's located, not just the number, because if it's not conveniently located, we did one where we had some. There was some that was clear on the right side of the project, and people are not going to drive all the way over there, especially if there's a street that's closer. So a lot of this matters where they put the parking, and some of the parking ordinances that we've seen have proximity to the unit. There have to be so many within proximity to the unit, because if you don't do that, you can put in all the parking you want. People just aren't going to go over there. They're going to go where it's more convenient.
I
But
know St. George's is, I think it's within 300 feet of the door, has to have the parking stalls. Like when I was doing a project and they had so many per guest parking, and they had to be within 300 feet.
otherwise, your guests just aren't going to park there.
Otherwise, they're not
Yeah,
gonna
they're-
park
they're
there,
they're gonna
so.
park
So
in
they
the
had to
street.
break up the guests in the pockets, is that what?
No, they had on-street parking, and they just said you can use the on-street parking as part of your guest parking, but you have to be within so many feet of your door, else it doesn't count.
Does in a PUD, could somebody come in and bring a parking study or ask for adjustments to our parking ordinance, Drew? Does
I would
that-
think that's one of the places where you would allow them to come do that, because it is, I'll always say it, people may not agree or not, but it's negotiating zoning. I have no problem with someone coming in and saying, I want to do a PUD, I got this unique thing, here I've got this study that'll help you at least offset on something you feel comfortable, you either buy it or you don't. And I think, but that's one of the places where you could make, concessions to your parking is through the PUD ordinance.
I agree. I think it's a good solution you have. Here's the normal ordinance that we require, but you can always bring a study, do it as a PUD, but we're going to look at where they're parked and show us how you expect the people living in these apartments to use the parking.
So Mayor, something else that I think could be important is maybe the realtors have some data that would lend some further distinction between the three of who they sell to, what is they do projections on who the drivers are, and it would help, because I think what we're trying to get here is efficiency, right? We don't want to be requiring parking lot spots that aren't going to be used. That drives prices up. But we also don't want to have too few that could create some dangerous situations. And so I think data would be helpful for me if there's something that's accurate and dependable that we could rely on, because these are good points, and I think efficiency is always something that we strive hard to accomplish. So
Thank you.
I appreciate that comment. I was just thinking the same thing. We don't want to have too much parking, but we don't have too little, and you just wonder what is that right number, and that's what we're trying to get to. And so I think more information would be helpful, and then it would be nice going forward too. So when someone brings forth a project, we're not having these long conversations with them about why they need more parking too. So
I'm pretty sure we exhausted you on some of the. No, great comments, council. Love the feedback. So Drew, your marching orders are this.
Okay.
We want the right number of parking stalls for apartments, not too much, not too little, just the right amount. And then those townhome projects, we don't want to see those spilling over into the streets and into the community to where it's a nuisance, right? So if you can kind of work on those tables, take into account some of this data, some of this new data, and let's find that right balance. And appreciate this, council. This is a good process. This is a good discussion. And we could keep it going, but we've got 2 other items tonight. We okay to move on to the next one? Great. Okay. Next item of business is a continuation of our discussion as we continue to update and clean up our ordinances. This is Title III, Business and License Regulations. City Recorder Tara Pence, would you mind just running us through this slide? Is it the second or maybe third time, and then just fielding any questions?
You bet. This is the third time, so I'll be quick. So this is a repeal and replacement of the entire business license code. We did on the summary, I just want to review this really quickly so you are aware. There are no changes whatsoever to the alcoholic beverages, residential solicitation, or sexually oriented businesses. That column in the middle they have special regulations through state law. So we've just noted those with those codes. So we follow those specifically. And then on the right-hand side, these are where most of the changes came. So I'll hit these 2 quickly because they're easy. The occult arts, we just added a BCI check as recommended by the police department. Our short-term rentals, we just wanted to note that there is a zoning code that we follow, and then the transient room tax, obviously, and then the cleaning and garbage of the units and property management, which we've discussed in our last meeting. They have to have a property management company that is within the county that can maintain those. Then the tobacco sales, they are required to get a business license, comply with state law, and then as per, I think most of you are aware, but we do not allow any additional specialty smoke shops in Washington City. And then their biggest changes was to the home occupation ordinance. Previously, our ordinance basically did not allow anything. It was just solely your home, which falls under the Class A, which is new from the state. They are not required to get a business license. So we updated ours to actually allow something to take place in your home. So you can have, it's a secondary to your residential, no more than 400 square feet, or 20% of your home can be used for your business. So it's clearly incidental to the home, and then no sales or signage. The last thing that we discussed, and we've discussed it in depth, and so I left on that last part in red. We were kind of going back and forth. Businesses seeking to have multiple customers aside from the one vehicular patron must submit an additional comprehensive traffic drop-off procedure plan. But Drew did mention last time, as per our requirements, most of those businesses are required to get a conditional use permit. So I don't know if we necessarily want to leave that in there or not. But I didn't get any feedback from anybody. So I know a couple of you had questions last time.
I don't have a good answer for you. That's why I never got with you.
I know. It's kind of.
But I want to come back to the 400 square feet. Is that on the house or is that on the property?
The house,
So
I believe, right, Drew? The 400
not
square
clear.
feet of, it's no more than 400 square feet of the home or property can be used for the,
Yeah, because they're not
business.
supposed to use anything outside the home for a home occupation. Now, you're going to let them park vehicles, it sounds like, but I can't go build like somebody in my neighborhood and in the town I live in built this 3,000 square foot, detached 35-foot high garage. He's a plumber. I know he's running his business out of it and storing everything in it. So we make everything has to be within the home for your home occupation.
I just make sure it's clear that it's talking.
Yeah, so the 400 square
about
would be inside
residential
the
or
house.
not.
So if I had a 20 by 20, garage or a basement or something, that's the area you're limited to 400
So
square
Drew,
feet.
all inventory needs to be kept within the residential home.
Yes.
Mhm.
And the business itself, if I'm a massage therapist, I've got to do it somewhere inside the home.
Where did you come up with that number? The 400 square feet?
I didn't come up with that.
You-
Mine used to be 100
His was
square feet.
100. So he previously had 100. We actually just collected data through the state to see what was more. We're trying to be more flexible with our home occupations. We want people to be able to do a business out of their home and we want to recognize that that's something that needs to happen, but we also want to be considerate of the people who are purchasing a home in that neighborhood to actually live and not purchasing a home to live in an industrial park. So if there are some homes around Washington City that they look like they're living next to an industrial lot with that there's so much going on, but we've not had anything really in writing to abate those. So we've been working really closely with our code compliance to get some wording in here that we can actually make it so you can still do your business, but still keep the integrity of a community in a residential neighborhood. So that's how we've kind of come up with these numbers.
So I don't mind a plumber having a big shop in his backyard storing stuff in there myself.
I don't either. And the question is if it's
Drive in my neighborhood, you might change.
I'm with
I
Councilman
think the
Henderson.
biggest problem you have is once you start, it never just, we have one of those, I know you've all seen it, and it doesn't end up actually just being the one shop, it ends up spilling out into everywhere. So we're just trying to have something that you can come in and say, this is what we have, this is what we allow, and beyond that, if there's complaints or problems or issues, we at least have the ability to abate those.
No, but what about the guy who has his truck and trailer in his backyard? And he has, we talked about that. They have materials on their trailers. We're not asking them to unload their trailer every night. And as long as
And we don't, it actually, allows for a vehicle and a trailer for each business. And we're not saying you got to go out and ditch everything. I mean, it's just parked there for the night. They're going out to the job site the next day.
So is one reason that we need this policy is for egregious offenders.
Mhm.
Is that really what we're saying?
I mean, and we definitely need to address it because currently, right now, if the way our code reads, nothing is allowed. I mean, really, like if you read the way our code is, everything's a Class A business license, and if anybody's doing anything different, it's not allowed.
So this is expanding.
This is actually allowing more than what we have. And along with that, I think I mentioned last time, we want to do away with requiring outside businesses that are coming into Washington
just
licensing too.
recognize
So
those.
that's going to be part of this as well.
But I think I'm confused because you said our code doesn't allow anything. So don't you have the code to go after those egregious people already?
So it doesn't really allow for anything, but it doesn't really allow us any leg to
enforcement.
stand on to enforce it. So it's saying we don't allow anything, but we don't have anything in writing that's saying we can enforce like big box trucks that are parked all along the side of the street blocking traffic. Like we don't really have anything that says your business can't do that because we allow on-street parking. But we have people that are going through and just parking all of their business trucks all the way down the street, but we allow on-street parking. So even though it's for their business, we can't mitigate that.
So Tara, have we had any reports about commercial deliveries from commercial carriers making deliveries into residential areas? Is that kind of part of what we're considering here? I mean, with the storage of materials on site.
We've had that, and we did address like the large scale deliveries within this code for home occupation. I mean, it's really hard with deliveries because I mean, Amazon comes to everybody's house every day. I get like 4 packages a day. Everyone gets 4 packages a day, right? But
Pretty much,
I mean, it eliminates like the big truck and trailers that are coming in and bringing like large scale deliveries. Like I don't even know what I like semi trucks bringing in stuff for commercial buildings. That would be eliminated.
So I drove by the unmentionable house that we always talk about, you know, the one. And I didn't think it was, you know, I mean, I've always been aware of that house, but I've never taken a really close look at it. And I was with my wife, and I said, this is the famous house that we always reference, you know. And it didn't look that bad to me, you know. I mean, I don't want the city to turn into an HOA, you know, where we can't
I
build
think,
a shop in our backyard and store.
Right. And we're
stuff,
still not
you
saying you
know.
can't build a shop in your backyard. And I think a lot of that one is just, it's problematic for the surrounding homeowners. Like it floods out onto the street and there's like constant in and out traffic and,
Yeah.
you know, so you want to try to be amenable to that business owner, but also to the people who are living next to it.
You know, one of the best examples I give people on that is a mechanic. So I have nothing against mechanics and anything like that, but I've lived in places where a guy has set up a shop in his back. He's a mechanic. He works out of that. He's got cars in the street, people bringing them, dropping them off. It ends up being a nightmare again. So, but it's hard to go back and say we can let everybody else do it and no mechanic. See, we got to watch our fine lines when you go back and say, but not mechanics, but we'll let this, and this, but not, you know, so that's why you got to come back sometimes and say this. And that I'm just giving you 28 years of experience, you know, with that statement there. But that's the one I use mostly because we've all kind of seen that at some time probably in our life, someplace we've lived or have had that experience. And it's nothing against them. It's just that's the nature of the businesses, especially if all the vehicles and they're good, they're going to have a lot of cars parked there and they're not his. They're everybody else's that he's working on, you know, and they'll be parked all over.
I agree. We have one of those in our neighborhood, and it is a disaster. But I kind of agree with where Councilman Ivy was kind of going. I don't want to legislate on outliers based on just a handful, 1 or 2 people in the community that are, you know, I don't want to have these HOA style rules for everybody in Washington based on this one guy in this one neighborhood that's, you know, a bad actor or whatever,
You know, Councilman,
so.
that kind of just continue that thought is that, is there language that we could create within the ordinance that would address? I mean, how do you say what is an egregious offender and what isn't? You know, because I recognize ultimately we need an enforcement component, because ultimately we're responsible not only, you know, for the neighborhood to have that feel of a neighborhood and not a commercial area. But I do recognize, as I'm sitting here thinking about individuals, that probably most of them are breaking the rules, but they've been doing it for years and it's not a problem. So I don't know if that's a legal question that we can ask to say, how do we word that so that we can affect those that are egregious, but not affect those that are operating their businesses in a way that can reflect a residential neighborhood? I don't know.
So those are good points. I'm more worried about the egregious city employee that goes after people who haven't had a problem, but they haven't. I don't know who that could be, but you
Our
never
code
know in the
compliance
future.
is so busy right now, I don't think that they're gonna find any.
I know, but if you get on their list, you'll be on their list. And I'm just saying, I'm more worried about that.
It could be your really aggressive city manager who just gets annoyed
You know,
with somebody.
I don't want
right?
Jeremy at my
Could be really
house
good.
saying you can't park your trailer over there because it's some business thing. So I'm worried about him over there.
So a lot of times we look at this and I think I'm hearing what you're saying. We want someone to be able to start a home business and get their business up and running. And then there's a point, the balance is it still primarily residential or is it shifted? You know, does this still feel like a residential neighborhood? Does it feel like the home is still primarily a home? If you're cutting hair with one stylist in the basement, still feels like it's primarily a home with a home business attached. But as soon as it grows to 4 and 5 stylists down there and you've got cars and parking, there's a point where we need to move that business into a business area. I think that's kind of what we're looking at, is where does that tipping point happen? If you're a plumbing business and you're new and you have a couple of employees, you could probably do it out of your home. But as soon as you have a dozen employees who are coming to work and parking cars, how do we write the code so that tipping point says it's now time for you to go find a commercial place to run this business?
I agree with you, but I think that automatically naturally happens if a business grows. I would like to see 5 addresses that I could go look at where this is a problem in Washington City. Because I went and looked at the one. I'd like to see 5 addresses where I can go actually look at it and see, okay, that's a problem, or, you know, that's not that big of a deal. So, because I just don't want to, you know, legislate on the what ifs, you know. What if this plumber has 20 guys coming every morning? You know, is that actually happening in town? You know, I mean, if so, give me an address and I'll go take a look at it, you know. So
Okay.
most of the eyesores in my neighborhood are guys that aren't business owners. They're people with junk cars all over the place. You know, they're not business owners. So, I mean, for me, I'm trying to think, do I know any business owners that, you know, are making our neighborhood an eyesore? I can think of one, but most of the eyesores in my neighborhood are just people that have junk cars or whatever, you know. So anyway.
And some of our neighborhoods are going to be restricted by HOA, by CCNRs. That, you know, you have to have if you have a business work trailer, it has to be behind your setback and a gate closed. And
So when it says shielded from public view, if they have a fence, that would be considered, if it's long as it's behind the fence, and even though you can see the trailer behind the fence, would that be something that would work for this?
And that's something you guys would have to determine. I mean, like I said, our code compliance is usually not out there just going to try to find problems. We have a couple of them that, and I can get pictures for you or whatever. Our code compliance guy was actually going to come tonight and he had another commitment, but we have a couple of them that, like, they're full on running excavating companies out of their backyard. And why would they move to an industrial park if they can do it in their backyard where they already live and they have dump trucks coming in and out and they have a stockpile of gravel and I mean, it's a problem for their neighbors because they purchased a home here to live here, not live next to an excavating company. But what do we do? You know what I mean? So, I mean, you can say it's behind a fence. So we need to determine if you want to, that's why we said shielded from view. So like your instance where you said you have 8 trailers, but nobody can see them back there because they're flatbed trailers. That to me would be like shielded from view because nobody can see that. But once you have backhoes and dump trucks and track hoes, everyone can see those. So even if you have a fence, I feel like that is not shielded from view.
I'd like to get addresses. Can you give me addresses, 5 or 10 addresses of places you think, this ordinance would help? And I'd like to just go by them and see if I think they're a problem. So
I like it. I'd like to see them too.
Yeah, I can have our code compliance guy actually sent me some, so I can just forward them on to you and then.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate staff, taking the council's feedback on that, getting some, the ordinance is bigger than that, right?
Yeah, it
There are
is.
other things on this ordinance. So let's look at the rest of it. The recorder's office is in a lot of work that's more business friendly, that's updated code that needs to comply with state statute. Your feedback on those items, council? Additional feedback, or is it primarily the home occupation section that's the concern? Is that kind of the?
I have a lot of questions or things I like to talk about.
Okay.
One of the questions I have is how are the business licensing fees determined? And then what does the city use those fees for?
The fees are basically we use what it costs to produce a business license. We don't make money on them. We kind of just average like how much time it takes to process them, how much review is taken for each one. Commercial, we actually shrunk our fees a ton 2 years ago. We used to have an employee fee. So if you had employees, you were charged more for every one. The commercial fee is $100, but it goes through a significant review process. Depending on what they're applying for, there can be up to 8 people at city staff that are reviewing those. And then the short-term rentals, same thing. And there's a fire component, planning and zoning. Our commercial has to go through police a lot of the time. The general business license is anything that's just like a home occupation, the preschools, things like that are in a home because they have a smaller amount of review, but it's just based on the amount of time that goes into those. And so they've all been significantly shrunk down from what they previously were. Other than the short-term rental, we're asking that instead of being $50 to go to $100 because of everything that it takes to review those through planning and zoning and our fire department and everyone that has to take time on those.
Okay.
And then the bars and the alcohol is the same. The reason they are is because what we have to do through Department of Alcohol and Beverage Control and our BCI checks and stuff.
Okay.
Is tobacco specialty businesses also vaping shops?
Yes.
Thank you.
Don't get my wife started on vape shops. Okay, she'll tell you all the reasons why they're just as bad as tobacco and cigarettes. Yeah,
Why we don't
she's a
allow
fan of
any
them,
new
is
ones.
what
she is not a fan of vape shops. And anyway,
My daughter is a respiratory therapist, so I get to hear all about it too.
my wife's a hygienist, so
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Did you have some
So-
other questions
Councilmember.
for me?
So in the section 3-1-12, there's the denial, suspension, revocation of a business.
Mhm.
There's this process that is in place, and then down below there's a different process. With this process, the city manager is the one. Well, you first do the denial of a business, and then they can appeal process, and it'll go to the city manager. Down below, there's a section where it talks about having after denial an application or a suspension of a permit, the applicant or permittee may seek prompt review of such administrative action through the city council or a special city review board if one is established by the city. And so I was just wondering what everyone thinks about either having, a board or having the city council review it. I know we have different boards for appeals for employees. I don't know how you feel about just having you look at them or have the city council. I have concerns about just because of some of the situations, circumstances of this, the last 2 years of having, I feel like the government being too involved in private businesses, with the shutdowns and everything. I have concerns of leaving it to one or two people to determine if a business can continue to, because my concern is there were with the COVID situation, I wouldn't want to have a business be shut down for not enforcing masks, or if they didn't shut down, then I wouldn't want them to have to be shut down, or if they didn't close their business because they weren't determined essential, I wouldn't want to have the city, and I know that the city here didn't do that, but I just wouldn't want a business to be closed down if there were these mandates put in place.
So how many do you deny in a year, would you say?
The ones that are actually denied or revoked. The only time we don't deny a business license unless they can't comply with what is required between planning and zoning or the police department or fire. Like, we don't deny them. We don't revoke a business license. I think in the entire time I've been at Washington City, we've actually revoked 2 business licenses. One of them was because Department of Alcohol and Beverage Control had us revoke one, and one of them was because we had to, for law enforcement reasons, we've revoked 2 businesses. And I've been here doing these for 20 years. So denials are something different. Like, they literally cannot comply because they are doing something that is just not allowed in the zone that they're trying to go into.
So this is usually somebody who wants to start something and they're in the incorrect place,
Yes.
or they want to do a daycare and they haven't received appropriate state licensing or
Mhm.
whatever the things are. But we have a lot of code that has similar language. Staff will look at something, and if it doesn't comply, then they can always appeal to the city manager in most cases, and looking to make sure that the code was correctly applied. And then often they can bring that to the city council as the appeal authority. But putting together a new board, it feels like we don't have enough of them to probably make that necessary. But we are looking for ways to help them comply and help them do business in Washington, more than we're looking for ways to deny anything. It's more what can we do to help them find a way to make this work.
Hey, you don't become the #1 small city in America to start a small business without having
Yeah.
people on the front line like Tara getting those business licenses
try,
issued.
whatever
and-
we can do. If we try to come up with a way for them to make it work,
Well, I'm not trying
we can
to
Oh, I know.
go,
But
go
I,
after Tara or our city manager here. I'm just saying there
But
has
good
been
code, good
concerns
policy.
with.
Yeah, but
But-
our denials would only come from our city code. We wouldn't deny a business based on something outside of if it couldn't comply.
but it sounds
with
like
our
these other
currency.
revocations were not even
They're not-
things that,
yeah.
they were other agencies involved, essentially.
And 99% of the time, I mean, it is this other state agencies, we'll have a contract, the state DOPL will come down and say, these people do not have a contractor's license, you have to shut them down, revoke their business license. Because
We're at the end of the trough, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we are the lowest level of.
we really are.
But Councilwoman Casperson, would you because it says the appeal to the city manager's decision is a district court. Seems a little, it doesn't say go to the council.
Well, further on down, there's a different process. If you read, it was clear down on.
Well, this is, I'm just reading underneath the enforcement is that they appeal to the city manager, and then they'd have a hearing, and then if they want to appeal the city manager's decision, they go to the district court. Review is limited to the records of the decision that is being appealed. The court shall not accept or consider any evidence that's part of the record of this decision. The district court shall presume the city manager's decision and order are valid and review the records to determine whether or not the decision was. It seems a little aggressive for a business license.
I mean, what normally happens is the city council sets the policy, right? So it's in setting the policy that you really want setting the ordinances where you want your work done. You want to set it the way you want it, and then Tara and then me as the appeal authority, we're looking to make sure that that was done correctly. And so I think to Councilwoman Casperson's point, set it the way you want it right now, because after that, the staff is in charge of making sure it's administered correctly, right? So the appeal is to make sure that the determination that our recorder has made is in line with what the code says, so they have a second option. But after that, they can take that to the court. Because if you want it to be something different, you can change the code. Just change the code right now. Does that make sense? It's really an administrative thing after you've created the policy.
Well, and I think that's a good point, Manager, is that, this body, you as the council, you're looking at the staff presented code, which does a lot of really good things, and there are some concerns with it right now. But as you kind of dial in on what you feel like is acceptable, that's not the end of the ordinance, right? You have the ability to see how is this playing out by those that enact the policy, and you can come back and adjust that if and as you see needed. But I don't think we're probably ready to vote on this ordinance or the other ordinance tonight, but I think the council's given good direction to staff to bring back some additional information. So what I'd like to see is both of these items, both of the parking ordinance and the business and license regulations, to come back to a work session on the 26th. Are you comfortable with that, with some of those answers?
One comment, Mayor.
Please, Councilman.
Would there be any advantage to passing the business part of without home occupations to focus on that? Or can you even, where it's one?
I would say it's just 2 weeks. Let's get it finished up, and so we're not having to amend right back and forth. I see where you're coming. Let's move what we have to, but I think the area you're trying to address on that's still out there.
Yeah.
So let's just.
I mean, if we can't come to some determination, I'd like to get it passed just so we have the new fees, and we would like to start doing this reciprocal licensing and make it easier for contractors, because that's an ongoing thing. But I mean, we can make it work.
What I was thinking more is, like you said, the fee structure that we're trying to get into place
Can we just approve the fee
with
structure?
the new fees.
We're good with lots of meetings for, this is just how we do things here.
Well, no, I appreciate that, but what I appreciate is that this council wants to get the ordinance right. And I like the way that you're very sensitive to how does that affect those who live here, those who do business here. And I think you're spot on to do that. And I think staff's sympathetic to that as well. So I think it's probably my preference to have you guys work on this, do the legislative work to get it where you're to a point to have an up or down vote on it. I think that might take a little bit of, over the next couple of weeks, reaching out to, department heads as you feel necessary. And then I think in 2 weeks, I'd like to have them bring back some of those answers to present to the council. My question to you is, on October 26th, after the work session, would you be prepared to vote on in the regular meeting? Or would you want 2 more weeks and look into that first meeting in November to vote on these items?
I would prefer if we could do the 2 weeks after, because I will not be here for the next meeting.
Okay.
And I would like 2 weeks, because I feel like there's more to discuss, and I feel like we haven't had a lot of time to discuss, because I do have more things to discuss also.
And then can you also get with the recorder on some of those questions
Do you
too,
have other
outside of?
concerns outside of the home occupation portion?
No, so I have some questions for Thad. I did discuss some of the things with Thad, and then I feel like I should be able to talk to you guys to see what you guys feel about it too, not just what I've had the conversations with Thad about it.
No, good point.
Okay.
So we've got 20 minutes left. I want to make sure we get to Rick, because we're voting on his item tonight. So what I'll ask staff to do is to push both of these forward to the October 26th meeting for another work session. And then that'll give us time to potentially even at the following work session and look to vote at that first meeting in November. And so on the regular meeting, I'll probably ask to rather, Jeremy, does it make more sense to ask to have those tabled or just removed when we approve the agenda, or table them when we get to that item?
They don't need a public hearing, so I just think you should remove them at
That's
the
what I'm
first.
thinking. Okay, so when I ask for that approval for the agenda, we'll remove both of those ordinances
step in
and we'll
for
move forward on that level.
Okay, perfect. If anyone has any other questions that I can help with over the next couple weeks, please reach out and I'll try to get those addressed before the next meeting.
As long as we get it right.
I'm trying.
I know you are, Tara. I just have to, I know there's so many minds up here and we think different ways, and
It's okay.
we're just trying to protect it whatever we can for the residents. So we appreciate the work. You're doing a good job. We're
Thank
just
you.
difference of opinions on
We'll get there. We'll get there.
everybody.
Item 4, construction standards. Power Director Rick Hansen, you have 20 minutes. Hard stop at 5:30.
Okay, you guys are a tough crowd tonight, so make me nervous. Actually, we're not voting on this tonight, so it'll be on the next one, if you think we're ready for it. This is an update to our underground standards. Our last revision was in 2015. We completely reformatted it. However, I'd say 90% or more of the content is really the same as what we've done in the past. And a lot of the changes we've actually already implemented and are following the standards. So we just need to get the document to match with what we're doing. There's one item that we'll discuss in a little more. I think the best and the quickest is maybe just, you had this in your packet of the significant changes from the 2015. Mike Roosh has worked really hard, and then Nikki, as far as the documentation of things on putting this together. We've made it a more formal certification project or process for our contractors that do the installations for new development. This is what it primarily affects, is the contractors that work for the developers that install it initially. Our crews ourselves follow the same standards as well. So we formalized that. The online submittals now for done through City Inspect. And again, I get a lot of these we've been already doing. Number 3, I'm going to put a little just asterisk in that, and we'll talk about that in the end if we can. We increased our conduit depths. Secondary used to be 30 inches and primary 48. Main reason for that is twofold. One, makes it real easy, say 3 feet and 4 feet in the field. And then we've ran into some instances where grading changes after they do the initial installation at the first of the project. So it just gives us a 6-inch buffer that we can make sure we're doing that. You have something? You're fine, anytime. We've again added, you guys won't know what they are, but bridge switches on our large riser. We used to have 3 wire sizes, 750, 1/0, and 4/0. We've eliminated the middle conductor, primarily because it was rated about 340 amps, and it was terminated on 200 amp equipment. So it didn't make any sense. So it didn't gain us anything. It simplifies. Basically, we have a 600 and a 200 amp system. We've recently, probably in the last 6 months to a year, the contractors have to, when they install the wire, record their pulling tension, so make sure they don't damage the cable. They actually fill out a form online to do that, as well as warranty information on transformers, streetlights, things like that. So if something fails, we can follow on that warranty much easier. We've done a lot of work on improving our labeling of our electrical equipment. Each piece of equipment has a unique ID now. Not all the existing stuff has been relabeled yet, but anything new and then all the cables that are labeled reflect that. Our current standards, if you were to read it, show induction streetlights, which you can't even buy. And we've transitioned again towards LED, and so that's that update. For the commercial, we've added a lot more detail on services for commercial
Can I ask you a question there? Sorry to,
Sure.
is Dixie moving to LED on streetlights, or have they already?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
they've,
I know we
typically
were out in
follow-
front of them a little bit, but they're catching up now.
yeah, they're using the same fixtures. They typically follow whatever we do or St. George or Hurricane does on their systems. And to be honest, I think us and St. George are identical fixtures that are approved.
Can I ask you a couple of questions real quick? One is secondary power, the 36-inch deep trench, is that from the transformer to the house meter?
Yes, and it can be between the transformer and secondary boxes.
Okay.
Uh,
What was it 30 inches before?
Yes.
Now we're going 6 inches deeper?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then another question I had, so they did some, the crew, did some work up on my street on Willow Ridge, and they put a couple new street lights in, and the street lights are as bright as the surface of the sun. And so one of my neighbors, I think, emailed you to say if you could tone it down a little bit. Is that
And we have,
okay?
and that's actually an interesting. I'll try to make it a quick side note. We had a resident up there request a street light, and while we were doing it, we did that. The next door neighbor wasn't happy with it.
How it goes.
And the crews have been up twice. The second one was yesterday. And when they were out working on it, the neighbor that requested it said how wonderful it was. And then we've got the one right next door saying how horrible it is. So we have toned it down. I believe they took it down as far as they can, and they physically lowered it down 3 or 4 feet. So
It is much better now because I looked at it last night or this morning, and I could actually look at
they
it.
did it yesterday. So
Yeah,
The
before it
councilman's up
was
at 4
it
a.m. by
was
the way, so
yeah, 'cause
context there.
I saw the crew there yesterday, and so I looked at it this morning when I got up, and you could look at it. But I'm being serious. A few days ago, you could not even look at it. It was literally as bright as the sun. So thanks I appreciate
Okay.
that. So
well, we might need you to help referee. And
The councilman that might offset your heating cost in the winter, though.
We'll put the neighbors in what do
Fortunately-
they call that? A cage, and let them.
fortunately, the new LED fixtures, they have a switch on them that you can do them from 1 to 10. And we went from 10 to 5, and I think now they put it either
It's
on
so
1 or
much
2.
better.
So-
It's perfect now. So thank you.
Well, I haven't got an email from him today, so
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's good.
Yeah, it looks good. Thank you.
A couple example, one of the things that we've had problems were equipment's installed on a slope. People will tend to push their landscaping and use the transformer as a retaining wall. And what that does is it traps moisture, rusts the site out, and we get to replace the transformer. So if there's any slope like this, we're requiring them to put retaining around the equipment.
I just don't see the problem, Rick.
Pardon?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, well, we've actually had some of them completely buried that we couldn't find, so.
Metal detector.
Then the other larger change as far as the standards is we're switching from, they call it live front equipment. This is a 600 amp live front switch. And so all these parts here where these cables terminate, you open the doors, you pull off one little flimsy panel, and this is live parts right in your face, basically. And we've got hundreds of these, and they'll be here for a long time, but this is a fuse bay, same thing. If you were to stumble or reach your hand in there, forget, it's more dangerous than we call it dead front. And so this is the new version. Basically, you could touch anything in this and operate it, and you'd be fine. And then this is the new fuse bays. Again, everything's covered. And so that's probably one of the bigger changes that we made. They are a little bit more money, but in the interest of safety, I definitely feel like it's worth it. And again, I think the contractors, as they're getting used to it, are liking it as well. So that's quick. One of the other things that we had originally proposed was to add some fees. And I noted in there was a second memo that went out. The Power Board, we had lots of discussions on this. Councilman Coates was involved. And make a long story short, we were trying to address, most of the developers are very good, but we do have some that Mike will draw out or lay out the system, we get it back, and he'll maybe make a comment or two. They don't change the comments and it comes back multiple times. I have the same thing on our solar applications. I've got one that's on revision 7. And so the intent with some of these fees was to at least recover some of that cost and maybe create a deterrent. But after the long discussion in the Power Board, I agree, they're probably better not in the standards, but as a separate fee discussion. And so what we had proposed, or what we're proposing, and that's what this memo tries to outline that. And basically, this is what I would like to see or propose that it would look like. Reference our impact fee table, which will be updated periodically, and then just a statement that we would have fees based on current city schedules and policies. That allows to move the fees out of the standards document into a different animal, and that's something that we probably need to get with Public Works and maybe
Yeah, so
do that as a separate presentation.
one of the things during the discussion is, and I think Rick hit it on, understands this, is that it probably doesn't go with the standards, and because those update all the time. But the concern I have is I don't think these fees are going to deter the bad engineering. And so I want to look at different ways, but I also, during that discussion, made me think and say, hey, we need to look at all our fees when it comes to all of them. One frustration I've had in my industry is that I feel like we're trying to make the departments come together more as we grow and work better, but then you have a fee here and a fee here and a fee here and a fee here. And so I'd like to try to combine them with Public Works and Power and say, here's the fees. Because on like my side, when I submit a plan, it has Power, Public Works, all those things. So it'd be nice to have, okay, it's all in this area to look for the fees. So it's one thing I wanted to talk about and look at with Manager Ed. I need to get with you and we can kind of look at that and determine on how we deal with our inspection fees versus our plan submittal fees, and kind of just, because I don't think we have we don't really have much fees.
We don't.
And I know adjacent cities
Have
have,
very few fees.
and we need to address that because we should be covering, and I'm all about, because I've told you I'm frustrated that we have those groups that turn in bad plan after bad plan, because I don't think it's fair to our staff, and I think there's other ways of handling that, and I'm not going to get into that because of time tonight, but there's other ways of handling those bad plans and bad things than $100 fee. I just don't think it's going to deter them. It's going to piss them off, but it's not going to deter them.
Well, and that's our point. We're not trying to collect fees. We're trying to correct behavior or induce good behavior. So if that's not the way to get around it, let's look at other ways to do it.
And so that's what the Power Board at their last meeting have made the recommendation to the council to approve the standards. They didn't have this exact language other than they just basically said to remove the fees out of it. And so this is what I came up to present to you. And that's the only change that would be recommended. And so any questions? If, my plan is to bring it to a vote next council meeting. If you feel like we're ready, or if we need to do more work session, that's fine too.
So if I may, I have one comment, is that the Power Board has reviewed this. They're the experts on these, and I have to go with their recommendation on what, between the department and them on the standards. I think it makes sense to ultimately decide those. There's nothing in there that made me concerned besides moving the fees and dealing with that in a different situation. So that's my input, being on the Power Board, so.
And I like that. And I think as we start, I like the idea of consolidating fees. And typically we'll review that at the first of the year, right? We'll have those fee schedules. So that gives us an opportunity to start to move towards the consolidation and, really, clear easy to find fees and updates as needed. Councilman?
Can you still do slurry if you can't get 36 inches on a secondary
The way it's
line?
written is on approval, so
On
they
approval?
can't just do it on their own, we'd have to
Right.
look at it. I
With
mean,
approval.
we've done it where we've had to cross a big storm drain or something like that ourselves, but again, it's done on a
Right.
case-by-case basis, used very sparingly.
I feel like you guys are going a little soft on the power director here. I mean, you have
I
anything?
gave you 70 pages to read, you know, so.
Maybe because
These were just worn out.
you're in good shape, Rick. Appreciate you. Any other thoughts or comments? We'll have this on the regular meeting agenda in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Next time, we'll have Rick come and give the pros and cons of different wire gauge sizes so that he can stand up there longer.
Yeah, I feel like I need more information from you. More than
Well,
74
we-
pages.
Come out to the plant and we'll show you. You want even more excitement, so, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rick. All right, we'll call for motion to adjourn and break until our 6 o'clock meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Coates, second by Martinson. All in favor?
All right.
We are adjourned.
So if I call you to referee those two, I will. Because they're next door neighbors.
They're both good friends of mine. John emailed me. It was right.
But you know what the funny thing is? That light had been there for like 2 months.
Oh, yeah.
Said it.
I never even noticed it until he emailed me and I looked at it.
It's happened more than once. I've heard shades of night.
Oh,
Contractors don't like it, right? That's what we hear. I haven't seen you for a while.
Wonder why? What'd I do?
I was at UAMPS all last week, so it
Wasn't. I was up in Salt Lake, but
was okay. I mean, we missed some really good players.
he was at Utah City Leagues.
Lee.
I knew you
I meant
meant.
Lee, sorry.
I was up there on Thursday.
That's next
No,
week.
I was, Rick. I was there the whole time, remember?
You did not do anything except study. You
Yeah,
worked on
I
your
just looked hard at the paperwork. I'm not going with us. Where is it at? It's hard duty. You're flying? That's a long drive.
Sunday morning.
Go visit kids too on the way up.
No.
It's a long drive. I'm not listening to that. Blake, we're gonna have a talk about this.
I feel uncomfortable.
Why don't you put a suit coat on and you'll be fine? I like your beard.
You're gonna need to put a beanie on.
See,
She just doesn't wear it.
see, this is what weren't you talking about correcting behavior? How did you do it, right? Turn the AC down, ask them where to go.
Yeah, they gave me a
Don't turn it up, then you're caving. She needs a
There's 4 people watching. Maybe 5. Come on.
All right. Welcome to Washington City Council regular meeting. I'm Mayor Staley. Today is October 12th, 2022. We're here in the City Council chambers. Our meetings are also broadcast live, linked online at washingtoncity.org/meetings. I've asked Councilmember Brett Henderson to give the invocation this evening.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the many blessings that we have, grateful for the opportunity that we have to meet here at the City Council. We're grateful for our wonderful city that we live in and for the many wonderful residents that we have. Please bless us now that we can do the business of the city and that we can always keep the needs of our residents in mind, and we're thankful for them and all of the many blessings that we have. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right, and I've asked Youth Council Member Dason McDonald to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
If y'all will please stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a good agenda tonight. But before we start into our actual agenda, I'd like to just take a moment to welcome and recognize our new Public Works Director, Blake Fonsbeck. Blake, would you come forward for just a minute? Blake joins us from Brigham City and Park City as a Public Works Director and has extensive experience and comes very highly recommended. And we feel fortunate to have him as not only our new Public Works Director, but one of our newest Washington City residents. If you'd just take a moment to introduce yourself.
All right, Blake Fonsbeck. I've had about 28 years in Public Works, worked from the beginnings all the way up through, and found that that's definitely my passion, is to be able to do problem solve for citizens, and really, and I love the city team and that type of teamwork. So I've worked a lot in that and really enjoy that. Also enjoy outdoors activities and really have enjoyed, I've been in Utah quite a bit of my career and enjoy that, and really excited about, really wanted to come down and excited to be part of Washington, and I'm tired of snow. In Park City, there was a lot of snow, so which I thought was great. I like to ski, but it's better to drive there to ski. But anyway, so family and I have moved in here, my wife and I, and we're excited to be here and really enjoying. We'll enjoy being part of the team. I'm looking forward to it.
You know, Blake, one of the things that I really appreciated when we were interviewing, and we had several exceptional candidates, and you certainly stood out. But one of the things that I liked about your interview was you talked about collaboration. Can you tell us just kind of what that means to be, working as part of a city and within the other departments?
So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, I've never been one to say, well, this is Public Works. I'm pretty much, we're the city, and everybody's the city. And I really like to work collaboratively together to really solve those problems. And it really does take everyone to work together to solve those problems and find a way that's the best solution. And so really it's the residents, they want Washington City to be the greatest and where they live. And so in order for us to do that, we just need to work together as a team. And so I look forward to that. I've always tried to do that, find ways that we can work together and really benefit everybody in that sense.
Fantastic. Well, thank you.
It's a great opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to be here. So look forward to it.
Thank you, Blake. And I got to tell you, just for the audience here, he is, if I'm correct, he's a Cache Valley product. So he's had his share of snow. And one thing I wanted to make sure he's got all the right credentials academically, but but he does know how to operate a backhoe and heavy equipment. So he's a really good combination of skill set for a public works director.
I can turn a wrench, whatever we need to do, so.
Thanks again, Blake.
Thank you.
All right, council, before I call for a motion to approve this agenda, as we discussed in our work session, we have more work to do on items 7A and 7B, which are some ordinances that just take a little more refinement before we're ready to vote on those. So I'll call for a motion, and also just for the record, we do not have a need for closed session this evening. So I will call for a motion to approve the agenda with striking items 7A and 7B.
Mayor, I'll make that motion to approve the agenda as stated.
A motion by Coates,
Second.
second by Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved with modifications. Okay, a few announcements here. These are announcements from now until, and mostly until our next council meeting in 2 weeks from today on October 26th. So October 21st at 10 a.m., there is a ribbon cutting for the Merrill Road office building. That's kitty quarter from Lynn's down by Riverside Elementary. So that's going to be a really nice, a nice Class A building. And so we'll have that ribbon cutting on the 21st at 10 a.m. October 22nd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Vernon Worthen Park is the first annual Battle of the Badges chili cook-off. And so our police department, our fire department will be there representing Washington City. We'll be going against other departments throughout the county. And, I have a big trophy in my office from when there was a competition for the flag football game. We're confident that we're going to beat them in sports and in the cook-off. So October 24th is our annual trunk or treat at the Washington City Community Center. That's from 6 to 8 p.m. That will be outside. And at last count, I want to say there are 34 local businesses who are there going to be handing out candy. So that's going to be a great place for anybody who wants to go and enjoy. And then just with the holidays coming up, we're going to do our best to cancel or move the November 23rd meeting. And unless we absolutely have to, I'd like to cancel the December 28th meeting. So council, if you have any thoughts on those outside of this meeting or now, let me know.
The only thought I have is if we have some items that need to move forward that would typically be on that meeting with the 3-week holdover, we move them up.
Yeah, so it's possible. I've talked to staff about possibly, November 23rd is the day before Thanksgiving, so a lot of staff's already traveling, council. So we may end up doing a November 22nd Tuesday evening if we have some of those items, but we just kind of want some flexibility on those items if that's okay. Okay, item 3, any abstentions and conflicts to declare?
Mayor, we have some other announcements.
Oh, yes, Councilman, go ahead. I forgot to ask if there's any other announcements.
Well, I just wanted to mention that our city manager is going to be speaking with the next week. And so if you don't hear enough of him here, you get another chance to hear from him again next week on the 18th at 11:30. Do you have more you want to share about that?
What's the most boring topic we can think of? It's impact fees and you. No, I don't know what the topic's going to be, but
You can't
That's not
discourage
boring.
people to.
come to the Washington County Chamber if you don't get enough of me.
Washington area
Washington
chamber.
City Chamber of Commerce.
And then I am getting really excited for our Veterans Day. We had another meeting today for it. And something I wanted to mention really quick is they talked about how people who don't live here are visiting, they come to some of these events that we have, and they're just so amazed by the patriotism and the love for our country and, honoring our veterans. And I thought that was really neat today when they shared those. And so looking forward to the Veterans Day. It's November 11th, and we'll have a program and a parade. And as it gets closer, we'll share more information about it also.
And Mayor, I just have one event that was asked to share, and this is from the Washington County Prevention Coalition. They're having a family night at Panorama Elementary School on Monday, November 7th from 5 to 6:30. This is for parents. There's some parent classes, there's some games and stuff for kids, and really it's just, as the name would imply, it's a prevention coalition to try to help kids make good choices and stay on the path to happiness.
Fantastic. Anything else?
So Mayor, I'm mostly just because I mentioned I might have to leave a little early. I want to bring up on the CIB, we were able to receive the $9 million loan from the CIB. We were only expecting 5 and we ended up getting 2 phases. So just want to let the council know, appreciate your support, but we're able to do the first 2 phases of the improvements on the landfill.
And for those who don't know, Councilman Coates is the chair of the Solid Waste District, and so he's doing a great job there and, you know, making a lot of sacrifice to go to bat for a necessary service. Fantastic.
That's all I have, but thank you.
Anything else? Great. Okay, if there are no abstentions or conflicts to declare, no abstentions or conflicts on this side to declare, we'll move on to item 4, proclamations. And we are going to start with a proclamation declaring October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And Councilman Ivy sits on that board, and so I've asked him to kind of introduce this proclamation, and then I'll invite representatives from the Dove Center, Madonna and Mija, to come forward and share a little bit about what this means to them and some of the things that are happening there. Councilman Ivy.
Thank you, Mayor. As you might notice, our council is all dressed in purple tonight. This is in support of the Dove Center. I don't know why I do this. It's a cause that we've been involved with for years now. We have one of their facilities located in our city. And when I joined this board, I had an idea, but I had no idea of the impact that it makes in people's lives. A Dove Center, for those of you that don't know, it is for those people that are seeking refuge from abusive relationships, from just needing a way out of certain situations. And the one thing that always, the one stat that always just almost knocks me over when I see it is 1 in 3 Utah women and 1 in 4 Utah men will experience domestic abuse. And that's an overwhelming number when you consider everyone in the state, just in our state. But Mayor, with your permission, I'd like to have you bring these ladies up. And when they get done speaking, what I would like to talk about would be better served after they're done. But we have with us tonight, we have Madonna and Mija McAllister and I'll let them introduce themselves, if that's okay, Mayor.
Absolutely.
Thank you for inviting us, and I think it's coming.
Right there into the mic, Madonna. We want to
So-
hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
Pull it down a little more. You're not going to break it. There you go.
No, I was just thanking you all for inviting us and giving us some time to talk about this really important issue. And thank you to Councilman Kurt Ivy for always being there to support us. Washington City has been a huge support for the Dove Center. And since we moved to Washington City in 2017, every time we need help, you guys are right there. So we really, really appreciate that. I just brought a couple of stats that I wanted to share with all of you about what we've been able to accomplish this year. So from July 2021 to June 2022, we have been able to house 355 individuals in safe housing. And that is 11,477 bed nights. The one thing that I did want to bring up is that we have not been able to house 44 individuals that have qualified for services, but we haven't had the capacity to house them. So that's about 4 people a month that were in need of safe house that we could not provide shelter for. We've provided counseling for 191 adults and 35 children. And we've fielded 2,281 hotline calls. So those are calls that come in, and sometimes they need housing, sometimes they don't. They may just need resources, but because of the support we get from Washington City, we were able to house 30 individuals this last year at our safe house here in Washington. So we just want to thank you all for your support for that.
Misha, do you have anything you want to add to that?
So I have been on the board for just about a year now, and on one of the committees for going on 4 years. And their biggest need is transitional housing, somewhere to put these families and take them out of their environment. And I mean, that really has been the greatest need for the whole 4 years that I've been on the board. And I think the numbers are staggering. I think it's very important. We all know someone, you know, a family, a neighbor, you know, we all know somebody that is in need of this. So I just think it's a great resource.
So Nita's right. It takes about 2 years for someone who's fleeing domestic violence to be in a safe location to get back on their feet again. And that's what transitional housing does help with.
Before I let Councilman Ivy talk a little more, if you two just turn around and look here to our youth council, each here wearing a purple ribbon in support and learning as they're serving. And as you look through amongst the crowd, a lot of these are staff members, and you see purple and ribbons, and you just want you to know that we're behind you, and we're committed to the cause. Yeah,
I'm feeling the love.
yeah, Councilman.
So just one of our important partners I want to recognize too is Chief Williams.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. I should not do this, Mayor. I apologize. When you see the impact that you have on people's lives and the desperate need that they have, what I want to talk about is what Misha touched on. She's a professional realtor, commercial realtor, and we're working closely on the capacity committee, which is we are trying to find space. We want to create a land bank of possible sites for additional Dove Center homes and outreach facilities. So what I'm asking tonight, Mayor, of our staff, of our developers that are here, anyone that's listening or know anyone, there's always a little remnant piece in developments, especially big ones, that may just be considered a remnant or not really worth anything. It's just being left open space. We would like opportunities to turn these in to housing that would create the difference for a lot of people. The Dove is on a very fixed budget. Every agenda item that we go across, we have to find money or get money to approve. And you know, the cost of things are expensive, but we don't see a way forward until we can acquire the ground to put these buildings on. So creating a land bank is a priority. Please use your resources, your friendships, your connections, and please reach out to me or to any board member, and we will do all that we can to make that happen. But on a personal note, Mayor, I appreciate Misha, the board members. It's a labor of love. We've kind of talked about that, but Madonna, this is her life. She lives it, breathes it, feels it every day. And you know, it's inspiring to me to have that kind of compassion and love in something that is so in great dire need in our community. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Proclamation. Whereas it is a basic human right to live a life free from violence and abuse. And whereas domestic violence is a serious problem that occurs in all cultures and communities and does not discriminate by age, gender, social class, race, ethnicity, religious affiliation, or sexual orientation. And whereas 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men in Utah will experience intimate partner violence in their lifetime, and that 60 to 75% of families with intimate partner violence have children who are also impacted by the violence. And whereas seniors are also victims of domestic and sexual violence and are part of the most underreported group, And whereas domestic violence related homicides account for over 40% of homicides in Utah, and 80 Utah children will witness the murder or attempted murder of their mother every year. And whereas awareness and intentional collaboration are required to find solutions to abuse and intimate partner violence, and whereas it is the role of local government to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. Now therefore, I, Cress Staley, Mayor of the City of Washington, Utah, in partnership with the Dove Center, do hereby proclaim October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the City of Washington. We urge all residents to use October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month to learn how they can break the silence and end domestic violence in our community. In witness whereof, I have hereto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the City of Washington, Utah, this 12th day of October, 2022. I'd like to get 3 pictures, the first with you two and the council. Then I'd like to invite the youth council and then the staff. Let's do that, council. We get some pictures here. Jordan, can you help us with that?
Good job.
Oops. I'm always short, so I'm always in the front.
Thank you.
So Kurt, can you get those pictures to me so we can put them on our Facebook page? All right, awesome.
Right in the middle. Everyone in purple.
So great.
Yeah. Awesome.
If they're bad, we'll fire them. We want them to feel the support. All right, make it.
All right, awesome.
Yay, good job.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Okay. So let's move on to item 4B, which is another very important proclamation. And we're so fortunate to have this youth council, and we were just thrilled to join you as you gave the lieutenant governor and some of this state executive staff a tour of the Covington home. You just represent so well. We couldn't be more pleased with you. So I'd like to invite the city manager, and help me with your name. Is it Blake Berkeley Nyson? City manager filling in for the mayor tonight, Berkeley Nyson. If you'd come forward and take it from here. Yes, come up with the rest.
Okay, Mayor, City Council. I'm Berkeley Nyson, the city manager, as we just said. And we just wanted to present to you our drug proclamation for the month of October. I'm here with not all of our city council. We'd like to excuse them and our mayor. It's fall break, but we still felt it was really important to come today. So I'm going to go ahead and read this off for you all. It says, whereas the Washington City Youth Council want children and other youth to know about the dangers of drug abuse, and whereas we will ask children and other youth to follow rules about not using drugs, and whereas we will set a good example for children and other youth by not using illegal drugs, which include tobacco, alcohol, electric cigarettes, vaping, or misuse of medical prescriptions. And now, therefore, the Washington City Youth Council, along with the Washington City Council, duly declares the month of October 2022 in the city of Washington, Utah, drug-free, and encourages everyone who cares about children and youth to do the same. This was signed by Mayor Staley and our Mayor, Sydney Beecher. So once again, thank you for letting us present this to you. We do have this copy for you to display, just as a reminder of its importance. And Mayor Staley, can we invite you and the City Council to get a picture with us?
Absolutely. Well done, city manager. So this will be in my office. Youth Council and our friends from the Dove Center, you're welcome to stay, but you probably have other pressing things to do, and the rest of the business isn't nearly as fun as what we've just done. So we're happy to excuse you now if you'd like to leave.
Can't believe you let the student council off that easy. Or the youth council.
They have
sorry.
their own meetings.
Act like there's a football game to go to or something.
Item 5, consent agenda. 5A is consideration to approve the minutes from the City Council meeting of 9/28/22. 5B is consideration to approve the board audit report from September 2022. 5C is consideration to approve a final plat for Finley Farms Phase 1A, located at approximately Crimson Cliffs Way and Bluefields Lane. Item 5D is consideration to approve an amended final plat for Labyrinth Point at Long Valley Phase 1, located at approximately Long Valley Road and Lost Springs Drive. Item 5D is consideration to approve the amended final plat for Queens Ridge Phase 1, Lot 10 at approximately 2909 South Kate Lane. If there are no items to be pulled or brief discussion or clarification, I'll call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, I just have two brief comments. I don't think we need to pull them. I'll just make a comment.
Councilman.
Just a clarification on consent agenda 5A, where we're talking accommodating existing structure. Now, does this affect the hillside at all? I don't know if it was in the hillside or if it is not, but there was a question on whether or not that's going to require hillside cut to.
Isn't
Okay,
5A is the minutes?
That's the minutes. Was there, or was you referring to 5C?
I've got consent agenda 5A.
Yeah, that's the city minutes. Was there something in the meeting that?
Are we talking Finlay Farms, Councilman?
Talking 6A?
Yeah. I must have printed the agenda before.
Which item is it, Councilman?
It is consideration to approve the minutes from city council meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. My apologies. Made the notes on the wrong page. I apologize. So my question is on 5C. Apologize. This is. I just wanted to make a a comment on this one. This was one that I realize that this is just on the consent agenda because they're just changed their engineer. And I just wanted to remind staff and council that this was a one that in another phase, in phase 6, this is where the reclamation and the mitigation needs to happen down in the fields. Just wanted to remind the council and staff of that. That's something that the applicant is aware of, but just wanted to make sure that that's something that's being worked on and considered. So
Duly noted, and I'm getting nods from staff. Thank you, Councilman. Good clarification there. Any further brief discussion? If not, I'll call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda as outlined.
Motion by Coates,
I'll second that.
second by Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. We have 2 public hearings this evening. Are any in the audience here to speak to these public hearings? Okay, seeing none, I will forego the script. And I'll make note that we did not receive any electronic public comment prior to the meeting. And I'll also make a note that the council has reviewed the applications and the proceedings from the Planning Commission. 6A is a public hearing and consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change request Z-22-18 from open space to residential 15,000 square foot lots, R-1-15, located at approximately Wild Horse Ridge and Desperado Drive. Community Development Director Drew Ellerman will present on this item.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, the applicants request an approval to change the zoning of approximately 0.10 acres. The request is from the current zoning of open space to the proposed single-family residential 15,000 square foot minimum, or the R-115 zoning district. The R-115 request is for the purpose of adding usable buildable space footage to the already existing lot. And that's the area designated in the green hashed area that is seeking the change. This particular location had a general plan use designation recently approved to the very low density residential, and it was open space. And you just, in fact, it might have been your last meeting we did that, if I recall. So that allows for the zoning to go to the very low density, carries the R-115 in it. The surrounding zoning to this parcel is open space to the north, R-115 to the east and south, R-110 to the west. Staff has no concerns with the proposed zone change as outlined. The application is in harmony with the new updated general plan designation. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-22-18 for the zone change request from open space to the R-115 zoning district. And that's on to you, the City Council, based on the findings below. I'll be glad to answer any questions. I think we talked about them in the general plan amendment to this, but if anything else, I'll be glad to help.
Questions for Drew? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Would anyone like to come forward and speak to this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and turn to the council for further discussion and or a motion.
So is this correct? It's just 1/10 of an acre?
Yes.
It's almost one lot, right?
Well, it's not even that. It's about 4,000 square feet.
Okay.
So
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve item 6A for the change from zone change request Z-22-18 from open space to residential 15,000 square foot lot.
Motion by Councilmember Coates,
Second.
second by Councilmember Martinson. This is an ordinance, so I will call for a roll call vote. Let's go Ivy.
Aye.
Martinson.
Aye.
Casperson.
Aye.
Henderson.
Aye.
Coates.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. I was told that I should not be too predictable in my voting. I don't know. I wasn't worried about that one. Item 6B, public hearing and consideration to approve an ordinance amending a portion of the city code, more specifically Title 9 and Title 10, public hearings. City Manager Jeremy Redd.
Thank you, Mayor. I think everyone's aware of this item. We've discussed it a few times, had some work sessions on it, but this would be the change would be to On zone changes, PUD zone changes, and general plan amendments, what we would do is remove the requirement to advertise, send letters, and hold public hearings at council meetings in addition to the meetings that are held at planning commission level. I think we've discussed it, but just for those who are here tonight, that would not limit the mayor from allowing public comment at a city council meeting. All it would do is remove the requirement. So some of these items, like the one that we just handled previously, where it was such a small issue with a swimming pool, he had to come to 4 different public hearings, advertise for the expense and things. But on those items that are a little more interesting or applicable to neighbors, we would still be able to allow that conversation. It also gives more importance or more status to the planning commission, who will be the main body that hears the public comments. And then our residents don't have to feel like they have to come twice. I think this is made possible because of technology that we have, and also because of the council that is committed to reading those public comments and watching them on the screen, so we don't have to duplicate that effort. So that would be the intention of this ordinance.
So I might just add to that, Mayor, is that state law only requires 1 public hearing. And of course, I've made comment before, and I know the other council a lot agrees with this, is that the reason that I can see my way forward in voting for this was that the mayor would always have discretion, that if there needs to be more discussion, our good mayor would allow that to happen, so that everyone can feel like they have a voice at whatever level that they feel like they would like that voice to be heard.
And to add to Councilman Ivy's comments, the council also could decide we would like a public hearing before we vote on an item, and then we would just have to go back and notice it and reschedule it. And so this doesn't mean you don't get to have public hearings if you want them. It just means that we take them out as a matter of course, as far as 2 per application.
So if we see that there's like a contentious item that went through planning commission, we could say, hey, let's get that noticed and get that on the agenda. So that it's, I don't want them to get here and then all of a sudden be like, well, we should have a public hearing, and then 3 more weeks have to go by. Like, I just think we should be more proactive. If we feel like it's coming, then we should do it. But I do like the fact that, I mean, if the whole room is full, I like the fact that we say, hey, get your representatives, get concise answers, and come put your concerns out to us, so we can keep these meetings moving along and hear them as a council. I think that is important, so I appreciate that, and I'm glad we have that as a caveat, that the mayor or council can say, hey, let's hear these people.
So what's that process, Mr. Segmiller, as far as if the council deems that we need it, or that the mayor I'm sure has that,
So I
that
go to,
authority?
Councilman, I go to all the planning commission meetings, and probably between me and Thad and Drew, if we can see that there's an item that comes before them that's going to need extra attention on our part, we can make that happen or bring it to the mayor's attention.
It doesn't take a formal motion. We could ask the mayor for that, or is that?
Well, so I think the process would be anybody on the council indicating that they would like a public hearing on an item, and then we would schedule it for a public hearing. I don't believe that we need a formal motion to require that. I think that it could be something that comes from the mayor or from the council input. Another thing that drives a change is, we now have all of our public hearings fully recorded and available to watch the whole thing, right? We used to just have a meeting minute record, and now we've got the whole transcript visible and able to watch and listen to. And we think that helps us focus the public hearings, so we get everybody there, get all the feedback when we can, and then we can just watch it instead of just repeating it a second time.
And Mayor, if I may add to that, we might know ahead of time if we're getting a lot of written comment on an item, 12, 15, 18, we may just send you an email saying you might want to watch this tonight on the planning commission. Then you can all just get a hold of the mayor and say, hey, I think we better hold, because I'd need to know as soon as possible so we can get the notice out in time, because we don't want to then push more time on the applicants. So we'd have to have those ready and probably in the mail that Thursday right after, well, it would be close to that week. I'd have to get them in the mail.
But even if we don't, so say we don't notice, and there's that thing, I think the thing that we should direct our planning commission is, hey, if you have there's a lot of concerns here, go to council meeting. They'll allow a few people to speak, and the mayor can allow that. I don't know if we have to send out notices if they're all here, right?
If it's
So-
if it's a big item, they're showing up, they know, right? We don't have to send, the notices are in case, so something doesn't slip
You know,
through.
part of the, and we've had a lot of discussion. You've brought me along and staff, and again, the state is this way as well, but we want to hear from the public. But I think what this does is it lets the public know that when you're speaking to the Plan Commission, who is the land use experts for the city, right? You're essentially speaking to the council. So what you have to say, they represent us in these very same chairs in those meetings. And not only, you know, in times past, we would have read the minutes, but now we can watch those meetings in real time or shortly thereafter. And it gives this council plenty of time to consider, you know, the public feedback. And again, there's some discretion, but I think it makes sense. It doesn't duplicate a process that's taking place appropriately at the Plan Commission level.
Or like tonight, Mayor, we had this one that was so minor that, you know, instead of having to hold a whole nother period, you know, public hearing and go through all that.
Additional notice, additional cost, additional time.
Exactly. We can just run that through and we can actually save time, you know, as well on those. So
It's probably helpful to distinguish. Public hearing is really a term of art. It's a legislative defined term. It means you've got to give a notice, a written paper notice mailed by the U.S. mail to a certain group of people within a certain distance, within a certain time period, before the council can take an action. And so we're proposing that we comply with state law, but we don't comply with state law twice on each application. Even if the council were to approve this, it's always at the mayor's discretion to invite public comment. No, it wouldn't be a public hearing per state law, but public could be allowed to speak at a meeting and give the council additional information or feedback on an item.
Similar to how we did during our work session, right? It was not a public hearing, but I allowed a public comment from someone who had good information to share. Jeremy?
Well, I would even point to what happened last week. So we had an item that was not required to have a public hearing, but the HOA had sent in a letter ahead of time, and I think the council all read the letter and they addressed it. So they didn't need to get up and speak, and in a lot of cases, they won't, as long as the council's listening to their concerns and looking at those and addressing them. It just really makes things more efficient for everybody. But
So Mayor, just another question for Mr. Segmiller. I'm just trying to, I like where we're heading. I understand it costs the city money. It takes valuable man hours to process the notices. But here's a what if. Let's say that we're in a meeting, we have some folks come up and they speak to the item that we're considering. Other people after the fact say, well, if I'd known that they were going to be able to speak, I would have been there too. Is there any way that we could mitigate that or to notice that out, that there could possibly be additional comment at the mayor's discretion, or how do we mitigate that?
Yeah, that's a good scenario, because it is true that there are times that we have a really good thought that says, I didn't even get notice, so I'm only here because, you know, neighbor brought me down. The council can take an action by a motion of one and then a vote of the majority present. And I think the motion would be, you know what, I'm just going to move that we renotice this, and we notice it, you know, according to whatever parameter the council is moving to do for a public hearing, and then reschedule it for a discussion after the public hearing. It's the challenge is, once we hear somebody at the podium, it's already more than 14 days since staff had mailed the notices, had printed the notices, and so time has already passed to satisfy statute at that point. And so the only way to correct it would be to renotice it or re-up it according to the instruction that comes from council.
So after the fact, if someone were to act in that regard, then we would be bound and our decision held moot, that we would have to have that conversation before, or tell me, I just want to know that you're good with it.
I'm not sure what the question is here, but
Question is that if you had someone that reached out and said, well, I would have liked to have made comment, I didn't know it was public hearing, I wasn't noticed, and they said, or I just spoke in opposition to what the council voted upon.
Okay, yeah.
Then
voted
does
on.
that hold us?
But we already had the public hearing at Planning Commission, so we've held the public hearing. And I mean, we get that all the time. I see it as, oh, I would have I didn't know, I didn't know we had to come to two of these, right? Like, I didn't know I had to go to planning and city council.
Well, I recognize that, Councilman. What I'm saying and specifically is that they may feel like that there was other opportunity given to folks that they didn't have. And
Yeah,
so
so-
that's my point. So I just, if you're good with that, I don't have any.
I think that's a
cause to-
great point. Just a follow-up answer. The reason why staff is militant about following state law on public hearings is the law says that if we do that, then the council and the commission have satisfied their obligation to notify the public. The legislature presumes that folks will check the website notices or check the public meeting notices, and then those that are close enough will check their mail. Now, having all the experience with council, we have people that say I wasn't in town, wasn't even able to check my mail. We have others that say it never was delivered, right? And so we're going to always have outliers that for whatever reason didn't get the notice. Our duty is to meticulously comply with state requirements of how we notice that. And so we've got staff that are trained on that annually. We've got processes in place. And so our duty is to comply. And our hope, I know as elected folks, is that everybody that has a thought will come and share it with us so we can incorporate that. But I don't think that we'll ever be in a scenario where everybody that wishes they would have come and spoken will actually show up.
So I've got to kind of continue that. I know we follow state law. I know we have email addresses for a lot of the citizens in Washington City. We don't have it up for everybody. But what if we were to say, hey, just a friendly reminder, send out like an email blast marketing from a marketing perspective, from a business perspective? Does that hurt us with state law? I mean, over announcing something, especially where it's an email, it'll take just a few minutes to send that email blast out through an email service provider to say, hey, we've got this upcoming meeting, check the link on washingtoncity.org, go to this specific page. If there's something that pertains to you, there might be public comment at this meeting, something like that, just to simplify, because we're not spending any money. Just a thought.
We've had conversations about how to take advantage of our email list. One of the concerns from the legal standpoint is we don't have any authorization to share that or to identify that email address with any of the individuals. And so if we were to do it, it'd have to be anonymous to all the addresses we're targeting. So we'd need a service of some sort. Also, email nowadays, with its convenience, is also becoming convenient for spammers and scammers. And so that hasn't caused us to make any decisions, but I think we'd need to keep that in mind as we made a plan.
Well, I think we're always looking for ways to get information out to our residents, and I'm not sure a public hearing is always the best forum either. We've talked with Jordan a little bit about doing some town hall meetings and some informational meetings and things like that, where we can give information to residents, for instance, about an upcoming project in their area and hear their feedback. And that seems to even be a better format than sort of one at a time in a formal setting. A lot of people are more comfortable coming and talking to council members in person, or sending you an email, or coming to a town hall. So I think we're always looking for ways that we can improve that communication. And this certainly is not a way to limit any communication from our residents. It's just a way to maybe look at being more efficient. And maybe on the 1 out of 30 that look like they're going to be an issue, we could have a little discussion on what's the best way to do this. We've even seen developers who will call their own town hall meeting, for lack of a better word, in a development or with a neighboring group, and work through some of these issues. And I think a lot of times those are even more beneficial than, having 30 people from each side come up and give us information, because they can really work through those issues back and forth.
Further discussion on this item? Someone prepared to make a motion?
Mayor, I'd be very happy to make a motion to approve an ordinance amending a portion of the
Oh,
city.
you know what? Hold on a second. Did I?
I don't think we've done a
I don't
public
have,
hearing.
this was the last
Public
public
hearing?
hearing on some of
Oh,
these,
it's a public hearing.
so I better open the public hearing and close it.
We're just,
Is anyone here to speak to this item of the public hearing about public hearings? The public hearing is now open. Seeing nobody here, I'll close the public hearing. And Councilman, I'm happy to entertain that motion now.
I'll say that again. Mayor, make a motion to approve an ordinance amending a portion of the city code, more specifically Title IX and Title 10 public hearings.
I have a motion by Councilmember Ivy,
Second.
second by Councilmember Coates. We'll go roll call votes. Coates?
Aye.
Casperson?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Martinson?
Aye.
Ivy?
Aye.
And motion passes unanimously. Items 7A and 7B were stricken from the agenda. We'll just have further discussion and have those at a future date. This time, before we close, I'll excuse Councilmember Coates, who is doing dad duty. We'll move on to item 8, reports from assigned committee. Councilmember Martinson.
Well, you saw part of my assigned committee responsibilities here tonight. They do a fabulous job of representing the city. It was a pleasure and a wonderful opportunity to have Lieutenant Governor Henderson here on Friday. And I mean, she had nothing but just amazing things to say about our youth council. And it's because of the parents that they have and the mentor in Carmen that they have that helps them come to where they are. So much so that Hurricane City Youth Council has reached out to our youth council to find out what we're doing that they can do to improve their participation in their youth council. So
Did you tell him to get a Carmen?
they're exactly, and well, they're going to meet and they're going to discuss, and that's essentially going to be the outcome is you need to just clone Carmen so that you can have her in Hurricane City as well, because we don't want her to leave our youth council as she's threatened to for so many years and she never can. So, because she hasn't been cloned yet. But we had a flood control committee that's super exhilarating to be on as well. Not as exhilarating as youth council, but they're moving forward with a lot of flood mitigation, and we're in good hands with the representatives of that committee and how they present things from an expertise level. So
I will tell you that Mayor Rosenberg has great things to say about your participation and involvement there, Councilmember Martinson. So thank you for representing us there.
I had to be on Zoom this last one because I had a phone call with a customer in Singapore at 6 o'clock. So I had to be in the office, but otherwise I'm in person.
Well, he says you're doing a great job. Thank you. Councilmember Henderson.
Mayor, I don't really have anything other than, our planning commission just does a really good job. And, as we've discussed these items here today, I have just full confidence in their abilities. It's a pleasure to be able to go to those meetings, and those commissioners just really do a good job. They take their role seriously, and they're very thorough in what they do. So just a shout out to them. And I also want to get on record tonight saying that Drew looks really snappy in that outfit, and I'd like to see more of that, Drew. You're looking good tonight, my friend.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
Purple tie every time. Okay. Councilmember Ivy.
Yes, Mayor. We did not have a legislative policy meeting since our last meeting, but we do have one before our next council meeting. So I'll have an update. We plan to attend in person in Salt Lake City. I would like to mention, Mayor, that we were notified that we are now a city of the third class from the Lieutenant Governor's office. We have a population between 30,000 and 65,000, which means a lot in the big scheme of things. And it's kind of a milestone that we've been looking at for a while. Just quickly in the way of excuse me, in a League of Cities and Towns annual conference update, I made a chart of all the different meetings that we were able to attend, and just a few of them: filling in the affordable housing gap, achieving meaningful water conservation, Rapid Growth Caucus. These are just a few of the meetings that we were able to attend. And we kind of, the way Mayor Staley says, we divide and conquer. We were all made sure that we were in different meetings and brought back what we'd learned to a consensus and tried to use the information. And those are very meaningful, but rubbing shoulders with counterparts from throughout the state. One thing that you'll learn in city government, and probably all government, is that things get done through relationships. And we're in a great position. We're recognized as a city that some say is on the move. Some say that we are the city that they want to be like, which I appreciate those comments because they're true, but because we're humble also as well. The other thing I'd mention, but the league was a great update. We were able to not only that, but visit with some of our local neighbors, and it was just a wonderful time. It was very productive, and something that we look forward to. Well, about every 6 months, I guess. They have the other 1 in 6 months time down here in southern Utah. I just mentioned quickly. Chief Williams, Chief Evans, and I and our city manager had a public safety lunch where we get together and we discuss things that are going on in the city. If we have any communication from citizens that needs to be addressed or talked about, roads and different things like that are always discussed. We had a really pleasant conversation, and it's just great keeping those lines of communication open and everyone pulling in the same direction. It was really good. And then the last thing is the St. George Area Chamber of Commerce hosted, of which I'm a board member there, so that's why I was there as well, is last Friday they hosted a lunch where Governor Cox spoke, and we also had a Iraqi war veteran, Colby Jenkins, who's a colonel in the Green Beret Special Forces, and they were able to speak. And it was just really fun to be able to spend some time with the governor and talk to him. He said a lot of wonderful things about our city, which again, I love to hear. He complimented our mayor. He knows the mayor personally. He commends him and what our city is doing, which is always good to hear. But it was an event that I really enjoyed. I had my grandson that day with me. I got to tell you this really fast. He gave the Pledge of Allegiance at an event earlier that morning, and then gave the pledge at this luncheon. And he told his mom that night, "Mom, that's a lot of politics." So I probably pushed him to the limit for that day. But no, that's all, Mayor. Just good things going on.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Caspers.
Is that the same grandson you brought here too? So you're always getting
That's a
it.
different one. That was a different one.
You're including your grandsons. Well, I already mentioned some of the events that are coming up earlier, but I did want to share about another event that the Washington Area Chamber of Commerce is doing. It's called a Rock and Roll Gala, and they're going to be recognizing people in our community. And so that's going to be November 3rd at 6, and the dinner will be at 7.
That's going to be a great event.
Looking
It'll be a
forward
lot
to
of
it.
fun. Thank you. I just want to say thank you. Washington City, as we've been at some of these meetings and up and down the state, Washington City, from the council to the staff, I mean, we're just standing out for all the right reasons. So just thank you. We've got a really special thing going here. We've got a good culture and good public servants doing it for the right reasons and for the right motives. And so I don't take that for granted. So that's what I'd share with you, and move along to the next item, which is item 9, city manager report.
It always feels like maybe my report should go before you guys. I always get the last word here. I want to talk for just a second about water. We've been doing a lot of work at the water district. The mayor, Lester, a lot of staff have been helping with that, but they have now adopted their new 0.59 per acre foot per ERU source requirement. So a lot of the work that we've been doing as a council to put in our landscape ordinances, and then the things that are happening at the county level, are going to help extend our water use further into the future. One of the things I would give our water department a lot of credit for, and we probably don't realize this, the AMI metering that we funded maybe a year ago, maybe a little longer, it's being installed, and they're just doing it amongst all the other things they have to do, which I think is really commendable. They're a busy group, but all the programming should be completed by the end of the month. They've already connected almost 6,500 meters to the system. Lester asked me to let you know that he's kicking out the new portal. So there's an online portal that our residents will be able to go on and check their own water use and kind of match that against other people in their neighborhood and get some feedback. And he will be sending you out an email. He'd like us to test it a little bit before we send out to the public. But I thought all of you could be good guinea pigs when your meters are installed. Really, really good. I think that alone will probably have a huge impact, even compared to the landscaping ordinance that we've enacted. We're already finding leaks. It's a really great system for maximizing our water that we already have. And then in the next meeting, we're going to start talking about a water impact fee update. We'll talk about what impact fees are and where we're headed with that. But the first step in that will be to set our growth rate. So we'll talk a little bit about where Washington City is and what our growth projections look like, and that'll help us set our water impact fee. So I was just joking when I said boring, because impact fees are not boring, they're exciting. And I'm glad I have a ready and willing audience for next week. So give me about an hour and a half on that work session. We should have it. So thank you.
Can't you all wait for next week?
This feels a little short for a meeting, but we have no need for closed session. So when we get to item 11, which is adjournment, if we hurry, we can probably get to the Crimson Cliff versus Cedar football game by the second quarter. So I'll call for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Martinson,
Second.
second by Councilmember Casperson. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Just cruise right through.
Recording stopped.